Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Today's webinar is focused on equitable placement and completion, AB 1705, with calculus support spotlight on Ohlone College. My name is Shantae Smith. I'm a specialist at the Chancellor's Office in the equitable placement and completion team. I'm also joined today in partnership with the RP group, as well as our featured Spotlight College presenters with Ohlone College. Ohlone, welcome. Thank you.
My name is Lori Silverman. I'm the STEM Dean at Ohlone College. I wanted to give you a little bit of background in terms of Ohlone and where we're situated. So Ohlone College is in Fremont, California. We're in the East Bay. We're located between San Francisco and San Jose. We enroll about 16,000 students per year, and we offer, like many colleges, a plethora of degrees and certificates listed below. And we have about, almost 400 part-time and full-time faculty with about close to 200 support staff and management. For Ohlone, we have been trying to figure out how to apply AB 1705 and not understanding in terms of what our students really need, or because there's actually lots of different students in the system, we opted to offer options for our students. So there are 4 options that we provided our students this fall. Option 1 is your conventional calculus courses. That's just basically the course and nothing else. And then we offered 3 other options that required various support courses or activities for the students. I'm going to let my faculty introduce their 4 options, but a lot of it has to do with how much time and how many classes are tied with the support classes. Our data that we just looked at this last week, comparing our conventional classes to our classes with support, as you can see below, is that the support classes are retaining our students at a much, or not a much, but at a higher rate currently at this moment than our traditional conventional class. And this is, again, prior to our withdrawal date. So we're about week 10 right now in our semester. So we'll know more data once the semester starts. But let me start with the overview of the, so option 1 is traditional. I'm going to kick it to my faculty to cover the other 3 options more in detail. So Drew, please introduce yourself and your class.
In classic fashion, I was talking into the muted. I did unmute. Okay. I think what threw me off was that Lori used the word plethora, and it's going to take me a little while to recover from that. So my particular calculus support option is a non-credit, single unit, but non-credit, I should say, course that meets only on Mondays. And so I have a regular Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday calculus class that meets for the normal amount of time for a full semester, and then a 1-hour class that just meets on Monday. I think I'm already outside of the outline here. Okay. So again, what happens in my option is that I have an extra day where my class meets, but the content inside of that class is no different than the content the other days of the week. It's just that I've widened out what I cover to make sure that I catch any situations where something needs to be reviewed from algebra or pre-calculus. Okay, let's go ahead to the next slide. Thank you. I wanted to mention really quickly that when I was in grad school at UC Riverside, I was in their University Teaching Certificate program, which is still in existence. And in that program, I learned a lot about teaching styles and teaching pedagogies, and that's where I found out about active learning, and which is why I use it in my class. A typical day in my class, I start by asking if any of my students have any questions. And I don't just ask about math, but I ask about anything else that may be going on. And then I also make announcements, and I'm always careful to point out things like STEM speaker series or things like transfer day. We have a farmer's market that meets on this campus where free food is given out to people who are like students of the college. And so I always make sure to point those types of events out for all of our students, and then so also spread it, of course, to their friends to make sure we have good attendance, and that, right, the students who need have food insecurity can take advantage of things like that. After I've gone through announcements and answered any questions the students may have, which usually includes, right, a problem from the homework or maybe something from a practice exam, then I go over the things that we talked about in the previous class, and it usually, 3 to 5 minutes of maybe writing a couple of formulas on the board, but for the most part, just hitting the bullet points, mentioning the examples that we did, and just making sure if anybody has questions from anything that we covered, that we go over that. And then at that point, I pick up lecture where I left off. Before I start each chapter, I email my students PDFs of the lecture notes for that chapter. The lecture notes include the examples that we cover and step-by-step solutions to those examples. Some students in my class I've noticed more over the last year or so are bringing a tablet or an iPad or something to class, and they're following along in the notes, and then they're annotating their device. And I think it's actually caused them to be more engaged in class, which for me, I think it supports what I hoped they would do, which is to study at home and to follow along in the notes, but to pay attention in class, as opposed to the usual worry faculty have, where if they give their notes to their students ahead of time, they just won't come to class. I don't feel like that's what happens, but you have to take the good with the bad, I suppose. Okay, so all right, so let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, so in class, again, we're talking about calculus, so we kind of alternate between writing out the definitions, theorems, and properties. And then I give them examples to work on. Generally speaking, what I'll do is I'll just write the instructions and the question on the board. I'll ask them to go ahead and get started, and then I'll give them a head start, and then gradually start putting in a step-by-step solutions. All of my classes are in person and have whiteboards, and so I'm using different colored markers when I'm making changes to the equations. For example, if I combine like terms, I might use a different color for where that happened, right? Or if I square both sides, I might indicate that with a different color, just so that everything pops off the board a little bit better. And then, of course, I encourage my students to ask questions. And what I've been finding, again, recently, and especially in this class with support, is that I'm getting every level of question, right? I'm getting questions about, how did I factor out the greatest common factor from a polynomial, or how did I simplify something using arithmetic to, which quadrant is the angle in, and we're using inverse trig, to try to find something. Every level of question. And I try to make sure that every student's question gets answered completely. And I also make sure that when I'm speaking to my students, regardless of what level their question is, I'm speaking to them with the same amount of professionalism that I would if they had asked, the most brilliant question I had ever heard. I'm trying to give them that positive energy, and also certainly staving off, any looks from anybody else who might think that's a simple question. They see that I'm taking this question seriously, and so I hope that as a group, they respect each other more for asking those questions. And again, I get stopped a lot, but that's where the extra time that each week has meets that need for my students. I give weekly group quizzes. So each quiz has 4 lines up in the upper corner, 4 or 5 lines for students to put their names. They work together. They submit 1 copy of the quiz. And not only does that give them a chance to work together, get to know their classmates, which should, my understanding is that studies have shown that students in classes with people that they know tend to have better success rates. Even if that's just anecdotally true, I'll take it. It also, from our perspective, is nice because it means 1/4 of the grading. And I find that a lot of times early in the semester, you might have students who are struggling, but as it goes on, they want to study and be prepared so that when they're with their peers in their group, that they're prepared, right? And then I also provide my students with study guides and practice exams and practice finals at least 1 week before each exam. I usually also send solutions, but I usually wait 3 or 4 days into that week before I send the solutions, because I know that some students can't resist looking at the answers if you provide them. Okay, so what's different about the class? Normally the class that I teach would be 4 days a week and it would be shorter. Instead, it's beefier for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then on Monday, there's just the extra hour. But I just had that class today from 1 to 2:05. Again, I don't treat that class time any differently. It's not the special, let's review topics from algebra class. It's just the same that we always do, just a little bit shorter. And again, just answering those questions and making sure that every student gets all the help that they need.
All right, well, hi, everybody. My name is Andy Bloom, and I'm also the math department coordinator. So I thought I'd take a second. There was a question in the Q&A about the way that we've set up these courses. All of the courses are set up as learning communities. So when students register, they're registering for a Math 101A, which is our calculus course. It's 5 units, and then they're registering for some level of support. And the support classes are all non-credit classes, and they're created, like I said, as a paired learning community. So students have to register for all of them. And I think I speak for everyone when I say, the first week of my class, students said, do we have to stay for the non-credit part? And my response to all of them was, you are welcome to leave if you can figure out when we're in the non-credit part of class. The class is just run as a calculus class. We take a little bit more time. If we need to deviate off into some, how to factor, how to write the equation of a line, we do it. And take that opportunity to cover the non-credit portion of the class. My class is a little bit different in its setup. My calculus is a hybrid class. We meet for 60% in person, and then 40% of the instruction is done virtually. My class has 2 support classes added to it. So I have 1 hour per week of support that is focused on calculus support. And then the other hour per week is focused on providing students with opportunities to learn how to be a better college student. We have noticed as a department that a lot of the struggles that students have are more around how to be a college student and the skills necessary than they may be about the specific skills. Of course, they all need help with that. But in my class, I wanted to provide an opportunity for students to learn and talk a little bit more about how to be a good college student. So we have a 9-hour non-credit course. It actually ended last week, that is built into my class. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So what a day in my class looks like, it is an integration of all of these skills, and everything that we may talk about at a given time is fair game all the time. I meet live with the students for 2.5 hours on Mondays and Wednesdays. Before class, my students are watching videos. That's where that instruction is coming from. And then built off of the videos is a daily problem that they have to answer. And I write the problems in a way that I'm encouraging them to make mistakes. I want to find mistakes. I was teasing them today that last week was very boring because everybody got all the daily problems right, and it gave us nothing to talk about. It was me standing at the board going, well, okay, here's the problem, and everybody did it, and you all did well, so let's move on. Whereas today I got the opportunity to talk about things that they were doing wrong and pointing out errors. I put a sample problem that I put on there. This is a problem from early in the semester, where I'm encouraging students to see the numerator of this expression as something that could actually be factored as a difference in perfect squares, despite the fact that it doesn't look like what they may have seen in the past. And when I put a similar problem on the test, I was really pleasantly surprised. About 75% of my students chose to factor the numerator as a difference of perfect squares instead of multiplying by the conjugate. So I figured that that was a win. And students are learning and listening and re-envisioning how they look at these problems. Wednesday is our different day. Wednesday is the day where we talk about those foundational math skills. And so the students have a discussion board post. I tell them, I want you to spend 3 to 4 sentences in the discussion board. You don't need to respond to anyone, but I want them to read an article or look at a website and get some ideas about the foundational skills that we're working on. And then that becomes our conversation starter. And we've talked this semester about note taking. We've talked about studying and preparing for an exam, the importance of reading the textbook. We've talked about how you can change the way that you study to incorporate, how you may feel like you learn best. We looked at, fortunately, our tests are on Mondays. And so on one of our Wednesdays, we reflected on how their studying went for the test on Monday. And they hadn't seen their scores yet. And then after our second test, we were able to reflect on, okay, what did you learn from how you studied the first time and how did you change it for the second time? And do you feel like it worked and worked well? Last week, it was the last week of the class, we actually had a fascinating discussion about how you're going to choose your classes for next semester. And we talked about Rate My Professor. We talked about, what are the important things to ask? How do you go about choosing the professors that you're going to choose and what's important to you? And it actually was a very interesting conversation. The students have really come out of their shells a little bit in talking about this. During class in my classroom, it is a mixture of me talking at the board and them standing at the board doing board work. I'll be honest, board work is new to me. I actually started it on the second week of this semester because I went to a conference and saw it done and I went, well, I got to try this because it looks amazing. And I got to say, it has been unbelievable to watch students stand at the board, talk to each other, struggle together, and to watch them kind of as a group steer in the wrong direction. And then as one or two people figure it out, then they all start looking at each other's boards and they all come back together. It's been really, really interesting to watch them bond and work together. And students who were afraid of getting on the board at the start of the semester now grab the marker and they know that it's okay to be wrong and it's actually better for them to make mistakes. And I've had students come and tell me that for the first time, like they see the benefit in being wrong, which is kind of, I believe, how students learn. And it's an important part of the way that I teach. A lot of times these questions are really designed to steer them in the wrong direction. Today, I threw up first derivative and second derivative sign diagrams and said, okay, draw me a picture of what this looks like, with no information about what the function was. And they struggled and they worked hard and eventually they started to get the right answer. And as one group figured it out, then the other groups came in and figured it out as well. But it's led to good conversations. I put a couple of examples in here from some of our early work. Students had no idea that the inverse tangent notation and arctan were the same. And so, it gave us an opportunity to have that conversation. And luckily we did because on the test, I used both notations and they were comfortable with both. I have a number of students in my class that never took a pre-calculus class at Ohlone. About half my class, this is their first college class that they've taken. A number of them did take pre-calculus in high school, but I have a handful of students that took Algebra 2 and that's it. They've not seen any trig at all. I actually met with a student on Friday to give her a 30-minute crash course in right triangle trig because she realized she needed it for related rates problems. And at the end of it, she went, oh, okay, that's not too bad. I think I can remember all that. And she's been amazing. I had no idea she had never taken a trig class before this class, because she figured out the identity stuff on her own with no problem, just honestly at the board, working with the other students and kind of figuring out how it worked. So it was really, really interesting. after class, and this is one of, I think, honestly, this is one of the best things that I've done in the last couple of years. That being said, it is one of the most time-consuming, maddening things that I've done with my students. At the end of each week, my students have to ask 2 questions. One has to be a concept question from the week that they didn't understand. And the second question can either be a concept question or it can be a problem from the homework or class that they didn't understand. They ask really good questions that I had no idea they were struggling with. And it has allowed me to go back and refer back to ideas, refer back to questions that they have. It takes a crazy amount of time to respond back to each question that is asked, but the students ask the questions in small groups, no more than 5 students. And so they're getting responses back from each other, and they're getting responses back from me, and they're starting to realize that they have the same questions as other people. And what it's done is it's led to more questions in class, because they're starting to realize, we always tell them, if you have the question, I guarantee you somebody else in the room has the same question. And what they're discovering is, oh, that's really true. And they're seeing the questions each week and really having an opportunity to get a response from me and get a response from each other. It's been really, really positive, a big part of my class. That's the way that my class runs. I'm going to pass it over to Jeff and Emmanuel to talk about OMG and their option for their support classes.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jeff O'Connell. I'm going to be presenting with my colleague, Emmanuel Garcia. We're each teaching a section of calculus using the same format. And I'll introduce this, and then we've actually collected a bit of data that Emmanuel is going to describe. We use what is the STEM core model at Ohlone. It's called the Ohlone Math Gateway. So these are, we have students that are either engineering majors or computer science majors, and our math classes are cohorted with the appropriate class. So right now I'm the engineering math instructor. So all of my students are in my calculus class, and then they're also taking an introduction to engineering class. All Emmanuel students are taking calculus and taking an introduction to computer science class. We are kind of doing this as a team. We assign the same homework. We give the same exams. We meet at the same time, 2 doors down from each other. And so the students all kind of know each other. And so for us, we have changed the model over the course of several years. In trying to kind of get ahead of the AB 1705. This year, we decided to start with Calculus 1, where in the past couple of years, we've been starting with pre-calculus. And we, just like Andy said, we opened it up. People that wanted to be in the cohort that hadn't had pre-calculus, it did give us the opportunity to have conversations with them, because they couldn't register for the class unless they got their prerequisite cleared. And so then that involved a conversation. And so I was able to say, hey, there's some changes in the way that California is handling prerequisites. Let me explain this to you. You've only taken Algebra 2 in high school. I had a couple students who had only taken geometry. This is going to be tough for you, but we're going to be here to support you. And here's how we're going to support you. Are you interested? And universally, they all said yes, as soon as I explained to them what was going on and how it was going to work. The way, let's see, so our class, I think, is run somewhat similar to the way that Andy's class is run. We have a bunch of pre-recorded videos. We spend about 60% of the 5-unit class in person, and then the rest of it is online. And then the last bullet there about the holistic program, building culture with support built in, internship opportunities. That's part of the STEM core model. That's through Growth Sector, where they offer workshops that are online on resume building, interview workshops, things like that. Next slide, Andy. Thank you. Okay, so what does a typical day in our class look like? What we did, which is kind of similar but a little bit different to what Andy and Drew did, was we used our pre-calculus support classes and attached them to our calculus class. The pre-calculus support classes, there's 2 of them that are 1 unit each. And the way that it is built into the schedule is that it meets, I put asynchronously, but it's a little bit like what Drew was saying about the fact that you wouldn't know when we were doing what. Really, what I believe that the main thing that those classes did was it gave us more time to do the calculus that we needed to do. There are assignments in that, and I'm going to show you examples of those. But ultimately, what we've got is with the videos and the in-class time, we physically are with the students. I shouldn't say physically. We physically and asynchronously are with the students more time than would be in a traditional class. The pre-calculus support classes have a component that is just like really quick, like questions about, trigonometry, right? So using an online homework system, just very typical, straightforward kinds of questions. But then there's also weekly written assignments that go a little bit deeper. Could you give me the next slide, Andy? So these are two examples of the kinds of questions. And the point that I would want to make is that, and you can certainly read all these in detail, but the point is that it's not this is on an assignment about finding inverses, and it's not the typical find the inverse of this function, right? It is explain to me what's going on with the inverse, with the inverses of these functions. And so to me, it kind of takes it and goes a little bit deeper. So these are assigned, and then there's class time to address these along with all of the other stuff that is going on with our classes. Again, I'm going to turn it over to Emmanuel. We actually collected some data, and Emmanuel is going to share with you what happened with that data.
Hello, everyone. So I think we're all aware that, students sort of struggle at different levels. And I think as a faculty, we've all come together to figure out what are the procedural issues, what are the conceptual issues, and try to bring that all together to change how students feel about succeeding. Because I definitely have noticed, and I think, through my career as a teacher, when students have that mental breakthrough, that they feel the preparation, that's where it actually makes a difference. So Jeff and I were talking about, I wonder if what we're doing is actually working, or if students actually feel like it's working, because sometimes those two things are not the same. I think we all have had students who go into a test and they're like, I think I was going to do great, and they don't, or people who say, I didn't really feel like I was going to do great, but I did. And we're trying to disentangle, I think, those different parts that affect the student experience in terms of them succeeding and feeling like they succeed. So we gave a survey after a midterm, so keep that in mind, asking students, okay, before you came into our course, what did you think of your level of preparation? And now, after having been, I think it was 8 or 7 weeks into the semester, how prepared do you feel now? And if you look at the graph, you can see that we broke it down by students' prior class that they had taken. So we have students who had taken a course below pre-calculus, students who had taken a course up to pre-calculus, and students who had taken a course were basically repeating calculus. And what we looked at was the difference between the prior assessment and their current feeling of their level of preparation. Not that surprising, students who had already taken calculus, they either said that they felt the same or that their level of preparation had gone up. So you can see the two equal bars. And if you look at the middle one with pre-calculus, you can see that more students felt like their level of preparation had gone up. And if you look at below pre-calc, you can see that that's much higher. So, I mean, I think that this sort of makes sense that students are retaking the course. The pre-calculus remediation didn't really make much of a difference. But for students, in especially a post-AB 1705 world, who are coming in with less preparation, we're trying to figure out, did this actually work? And students seem to think so. Now, whether that's the truth or not, is something else. But I think that's the big point to make here, that what we're doing, I hope, actually makes students feel prepared, and the two separate issues between them actually being prepared and their feeling or perception of preparedness. So we can go to the next slide. If you want, we have it broken down here just by numbers and the total number of students. So it's a small sample size, but at the end of the day, all we really have is anecdotal information to go off of this. And then I can pass it back to Jeff.
Yeah, and it should be noted that the other thing I should have mentioned before was that both of us decided that on the first day of class we had an AB 1705 conversation, right? Students don't care that it's called AB 1705, but that just like, hey, just so you know, there's a wide range of abilities in this class, and that does not matter, right? And so kind of had that conversation to set the stage about the fact that that we were here to support. In this same survey, which Emmanuel is right, we realized that we wanted to collect the data, and the only day to do it was right after an exam. So, keep that in mind. But we left a question just open for comments, right? So, the question about how did you feel preparation wise was a, multiple choice question, but then left a comment open to anybody that wanted to say anything. These were just kind of a sampling of them. I can't get over that last one, the not gonna lie. I would not be surprised if I will have to retake calculus, but I'm not bummed about it. I will pass, I will at some point pass calculus. And I am a AB 1705 convert. I was really, really, really opposed to this when I started hearing about it. But as more and more data has come out, I'm beginning to see that maybe this is not the worst thing to happen to us. There's still an awful lot of work to go. But to me, that right there, that student comment, and I know who that student is, and she probably will be retaking calculus. But she is committed to pursuing a STEM degree, and I think that that's the thing that I am really excited about and here to support. I believe that is our last slide, so I'm going to turn it over to. Oh, and sorry, just one other thing. I am struck as I am listening to my colleagues share about the fact that we do not have an entirely a very big department. We have 10 full-time faculty. Lori told you about the size of our school. We do have an incredibly supportive department. We support each other. There was not a plan for us to say, hey, let's do a bunch of different things. As we were kind of developing these ideas, Andy said, I think I'd like to do this. Emmanuel and I said, we'd like to do this. Drew said he'd like to, and we just kind of supported each other like, hey, great, go do what you think is right. We trust you. Let's come back. I do not expect that 2 years from now, 3 years from now, we're going to have 4 different options. But over the course of these next couple of semesters, we're going to have a lot more information about what is the best way to support our students. Thank you.
There were a couple of questions in the Q&A about kind of how things are organized and how things are set up. I will take you back a little ways before the pandemic. We had credit support classes that we were creating. And it was a constant fight with students every semester to get them to register for the credit support classes. They didn't want to spend more money. They didn't want to take the class that had this mandated time built into it. And they would say, I probably need support, but I don't want to, and then fill in the blank with the excuse that they were giving. By providing them with non-credit support, we're having way more success. And I can't speak for Lori. I can tell you that I don't get nearly the volume of student complaints because it's an option for students to take. We have provided access to students who would like to take calculus for them to take calculus. And we've provided them with a range of options for how they can be supported on their path to calculus. We did play at one time with the idea of non-credit support classes that were not tied to classes. So students could register for any calculus class they wanted, and we would have 2 different times during the week that they could attend Zoom support for the calculus class. It was a disaster, unmitigated. The classes got canceled every semester. We were never able to really make them run. In this model, students are registering for classes. I think our 3 sections were 3 of the fastest filling sections that we had, despite the fact that students had to register for a learning community of 2 or 3 classes. I will also say that, as we saw at the beginning, our retention is higher. What I'm seeing this semester is I know I have 4 students that will drop this class on November 14th at 4:50 p.m. because the last day to drop is November 14th at 5 p.m. They're staying though. And in the past, they would have been gone because there was no support and no relationship. I feel like I know these students better than I've known my students in previous semesters because I spend more time and we have the opportunity to kind of work through the things that they're shaky about. Students are staying despite the fact that they know that they're not successful in the moment because they know that they will be successful in the future. And I think that that's due to the model that we've created. And I think it's really positive. I know there's a question in the Q&A right now. I think Lori is typing right now. Ohlone, and I don't know how unique this is for other schools. Ohlone has determined that non-credit load counts the same as credit load. So it depends on how many hours per week. An 18-hour non-credit course counts 1 unit of load in the instructor's load. Our non-credit support classes are each 18 hours, with the exception of our Foundations of Math Success course that I teach. That class was originally written as part of our EOPS Summer Bridge program, with the idea that we couldn't remediate math for all students, but we could teach all students how to be better math students. And so it's geared towards that, which was a 9-unit class. Randy asked about our course. It is currently a 5-unit course. We have a math department meeting on Friday because we know that CCN is going to load it at 5 units. And of course, we run into the same problems as everybody else with chemistry, computer science, and engineering struggling with getting their ADT. Honestly, we don't think that their ADT should be created on the backs of the math faculty, having to shoulder all of the load on that. But we're waiting to see what the new ADTs say. And our courses are 5 units right now. We're going to continue to put them forward as 5 units with the 1 unit non-credit co-requisite support class.
I actually also wanted to add that our option 4, the OMG courses, faculty actually recruit students that typically are not STEM bound, and also typically would have probably placed into an intermediate or beginning or intermediate algebra level in terms of the old placement. So we're actually seeking non-STEM calculus students and providing them intense support, and they have a great success rate, considering that we are targeting students that are not, didn't take pre-calculus in high school or even thinking about taking calculus in college.
We're happy to open it up to any other questions that people may have for kind of what we're doing.
People are thinking about their questions. Thank you so much for this presentation and sharing all your different models. I will go back to one question in the chat and see if maybe you wanted to elaborate on it. So someone asked, what does your curriculum look like behind these courses? And you explained about that, but maybe you wanted to go into a little bit more detail, because you had said, Andy, that you're really taking an educated guess on what needed to go into the curriculum of these courses. Is there anything that you've learned from, already teaching it? Anything that you plan to change? Are you adapting as you go? Kind of just a little bit more about kind of your thought process around the curriculum that goes into it.
Yeah, I can tell you that, the creation of the non-credit courses really was a guess. We put together a list of the concepts we thought students should have prior to a calculus course or pre-calculus, or statistics. We built these classes for really all of our gateway courses. But we left it open enough that instructors have the ability to improvise and move things around. And honestly, I've covered every element that's on the list of curriculum for this course and 1,000 more. And I probably cover every single thing that's on the list every day, because it comes into in some form or another. Going with non-credit gave us the opportunity to have a little bit more latitude with the way that we approach the course. And when I'm kind of giving the course assignments out to people, and one of the things that I try to say is, don't worry about whether you're in the non-credit or the credit course, right? You're just teaching the class, and you're having the opportunity to bridge the gap between the things that students don't know beforehand and the things that they need to know walking in the door. I think that as we are looking at AB 1705 and our innovative new pre-calculus course, we're being more deliberate when it comes to designing the course itself and the non-credit co-requisite support that will go with it, to try to capture a little bit more of what's out there. We do include effective domain and growth mindset and some of those things in all of the non-credit courses. It's just not as deliberate as it is in my class, where we're really focused on building college success skills. Our innovative course is up for approval at the, no, it's already been approved. We are waiting for approval at the state level, and it is intended for offer in fall 25. So that course is already up and moving. It was a department-wide collaboration to build that course. And Ohlone actually, we had a pre-calculus, one of our pre-calculus courses was one of the courses that was given interim validation from the state. And we made the decision to stop teaching that class and move towards our a new innovative course we're really excited about. Jeff, you want to, and Emmanuel, you want to share a little bit more about OMG?
I'm happy to answer that. So the STEM core model is something that was brought up by Growth Sector. We've been doing this for about 10 years. And basically it was back at that time, it was to try to support underprepared students who are interested in STEM. And there's a lot of aspects to the model. The most important one is that it is cohorted. So they're taking math classes with computer science classes, right? All the same students are going from one class to the other. And the initial model was about, again, underprepared students. And so 10 years ago when we started it, the cohort started with Algebra 2. And we, in the course of 1 year, we would accelerate Algebra 2 and pre-calculus and calculus so that at the beginning, in one school year, the students could go from Algebra 2 up through calculus. That model, we used that for about 5-ish years, and then AB 1705 changed the way that the department handled pre-calculus. We, of course, got rid of Algebra 2. And so then we just kind of changed it. The department changed the courses that we had, and then we changed the Ohlone Math Gateway program to accommodate that. And now this is kind of our third iteration with AB 1705 coming. We just kind of decided, we know how to do this, so let's just try it out this year. And that is the case. Again, Growth Sector is the nonprofit that developed it and that supports it. They work with industry partners to allow for internships and things like that. So, we've had students who start, again, underprepared as STEM majors, and then are able to do summer internships in, industry at industry companies that are local. It's a pretty amazing program. I could have a webinar just about that if that was needed. But that I think that we were very prepared to have AB 1705 hit in this way, because we've spent the last 10 years trying to figure out how to support underprepared students. And now we've got underprepared students forced on us. I don't want to use too loaded of a language by saying that, but I don't know if that has answered the question. Please feel free to put more of a question there or to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to share more information with you.
A couple of questions about our innovative pre-calc course. We are pre-AB 1705, we had a trig and a 5-unit pre-calculus course. With AB 705, we dropped both of them and turned them into 2 4-unit pre-calc courses. Our pre-calc 1 course was not given validation. It had about a 15% success rate like everybody else. But our pre-calc 2 course actually had a 70% success rate for throughput rate. The success in calculus for students that started in pre-calc 2 was over 70%. And so we knew that there was something that we were doing in that class that was really good. If you look at the course outline for that course, 70% of that course is not covered in calculus. And so whatever we were doing, it had nothing to do with the content of the class. And so it led us to some real introspection on what is it that we're doing. And so we actually had a department meeting last April. We put up the course outline for our pre-calc 1, of which 90% is calculus important content. And then pre-calc 2, where almost none of it was important for calculus, We looked at every single concept, and if there was a question as to whether it was used in calculus, it was thrown out. What we've done now is we have a work group that is made up of 10 faculty members who are designing the math, the new pre-calculus course, with an eye on what the prerequisite knowledge is that students need, and then where they're going to use those concepts in subsequent courses. And so we really feel like one of the things that we did in the pre-calc 2 class that led to student success was we were working with Cal State East Bay on a grant to try to design pre-calculus in a way that students understood the connection with calculus a little bit better. And so we developed our own problems where students were like solving a system of equations using the open box optimization problem from calculus, or they were using the series information that they were learning to find a Riemann sum, where they could see how things were actually tied to the calculus class. It's our hope that that was the thing that was working so well, because we're putting that into our new pre-calculus course, and really trying to remediate one level below and point to one level above, and trying to help students to see why there's worth and value in the things that they're learning right now, because they're going to need it again in the next class. And hey, when they walk into the calculus class, they can look at limits and go, oh yeah, I've seen something like that before, because we're going to be asking them to just have that understanding. So that's kind of the idea in a nutshell of what we're doing for our innovative class. I would be happy to share our course outline to anyone who wants to email it to me, or email me the question. I can email you the course outline. My email is very difficult. It is abloom@ohlone.edu. And I'm sure that that's everywhere in this presentation. So feel free to email me, and I'd be happy to get you all of those things.
Thank you so much for sharing your models and answering so many questions, and just really being available to be a resource for us as we move forward with implementation of AB 1705. Thank you everyone for being here today, and thank you specifically to Ohlone College for sharing your wealth of knowledge. Thanks everyone.